планировал обратиться и к гостям тоже.
Dear guests, but I see no guests here in the audience. So those who just wanted to have a look at what the PhD defense is already have had a chance to see the procedure, so therefore they are very well informed already, and therefore I do not see so many guests among the members of the audience. Okay, that's no problem after all. Good afternoon, distinguished guests. Though I see no guests here, so colleagues, right? So may I declare the Dissertation Defense Board open, and our meeting today is considering the dissertation by Elena Kulchitskya, submitted in fulfillment of the requirements for a PhD degree in the field of economics and national economy management. So our dissertation board was established according to all the rules and regulations of St. Petersburg State University and the Ministry of Education. According to a relevant federal law, 2 universities only have been granted the title to award PhD degrees. Those are the Moscow State University and the St. Petersburg State University. So we have already seen 2 defenses in economics. So I'm not going to speak in more detail on the documents. I don't want to expand on that. I'll just mention that this dissertation board is in compliance with all the effective regulations. No less than 2/3 of the members of the dissertation board must be present. But the quorum is here. So we have 4 members. The dissertation by Madam Kulchitskya was discussed and recommended for defense by St. Petersburg State University, the Department of Economics. Before I proceed on to reviewing the list of documents submitted by the defendant, I would like to first and foremost inform you on the composition of the dissertation board. Those are Professor Kuznetsov, that's me, head of the Economics Management Department, Dr. and Professor Candidate Minina, Doctor of Sociological Sciences, Professor of the Culture of Sociology and Communications Department, St. Petersburg State University, Inga Tsigankova, Doctor of Economical Sciences, Professor of St. Petersburg State University of Economics, Natalia Filimonova, Doctor of Economics, Professor Head of Marketing and Management at Vladimirsky State University, named after brothers Stoletovi. And lastly, Ludmila Tikhonova, Doctor of Economics, Professor of the International Management Department at the Economics Faculty of Belarus State University, Minsk. So this is basically the composition of the dissertation board. The defendant has presented the following list of documents to the Expertise Center of St. Petersburg State University, application addressed to Rector Kropotchev on reviewing and accepting the dissertation for defense as of February 27, 2017. The conclusion submitted by St. Petersburg State University, the review submitted by the scientific supervisor Elena Maslova, candidate of economics, docent, St. Petersburg State University, the list of publication, including 3 articles registered in the list of the Higher Attestation Commission, the Ministry of Education and Science of the Russian Federation, and published in the Scopus database. A certificate certifying that the defendant has successfully passed 3 exams prior to having her PhD defense, a copy of the diploma issued by St. Petersburg State University in 2011, qualifying Madam Kulchitskya as the manager of organization, 3 certificates on implementing successfully the results of the dissertation in Russian and English, in hard and soft copy. So the dissertation is drafted in accordance with GOST rules. All the documents submitted by the defendant comply with provision 12, section 3 of the PhD defending procedure in St. Petersburg State University. May I now give the floor to the defendant, Madam Kulchitskya. May I remind you of the time limit, no more than 15 minutes. Thank you so much, distinguished members of the Dissertation Board, distinguished members of the audience. My name is Elena Kulchitskya. May I present my dissertation submitted in compliance with the PhD awarding requirements in the field of economics and national economy management under the title of Development of the Internal Environment of the Organization on HR Audit Basis. Today, the HR is one of the key factors to ensure competitiveness of a corporation, of an enterprise. Today, the market is indeed dynamic, and the general environment is indeterminate. Therefore, we have to enhance internal audit. This is necessary to optimize the development of an enterprise and to ensure its strong ability to compete. So these 2 statements are the foundation of HR management, which is a key factor in the life of a modern enterprise. The objective of my research was to develop a specific tool. I'm sorry, I cannot turn over the slides. So the objective of my dissertation is to develop a mechanism to enhance internal audit procedure within an enterprise. To this end, I have delivered on a number of goals. The object of the research is the internal setting within an enterprise, whereas the subject of the research is internal communication, relevant for HR audit. The dissertation includes 3 chapters: bibliography, the introduction, the conclusion, and appendices. So, primarily, I looked at the indicators and their values covering over 200 enterprises in Russia. I also referred to textbooks, to research papers, dissertation, and internet resources. HR management and the management of business processes was done by way of a specific software named Bitrix 24. Most relevant results and innovative ones are as follows. By looking at the internal environment, I managed to identify the internal logics and the topographic structure of an organization. The very concept of tomography of an organization reflects a specific internal structure of an enterprise. It is necessary to look and analyze three stages of an internal organization. First is the external dimension and its interaction with external dimension. This refers to strategic management, entrepreneurship, and the cost of business. Currently, this method is implemented successfully by modern companies. This method allows to enhance HR management and to evaluate it. Successful HR management is key for the company efficiency. HR impacts directly on the internal environment. So this is reflected in the tomographic structure. Internal landscape of a company is relevant for the following structure. The initial factors are the type of ownership, the organizational type of a company, the organization structure, financial resources, organizational culture and conduct, facilities, and the final product. The dissertation establishes methods that include factors and parameters to enhance the internal landscape within an organization. The landscape is highly specific, however, which is unchanged is the fact that it is a multi-layered structure. Stagnation, progress, and regress are relevant concepts in this respect, provided that we analyze them in dynamics within a specific time span. The improvement of an internal organization is intensifying the communication. So therefore, our task is to enhance the entire system to ensure its integrity. So I look at individual components of an internal environment within an organization and tailor my methods to them. The dissertation also reflects an integral analysis that includes specific indicators to assess the efficiency of internal processes. The first stage of the analysis includes assessment of every component to have some specific technical data. It is done individually. The results allow us to come up with specific indicators that are presented on pages 70 to 72 of my dissertation. On the slide, you can see the overall takeaway of this analysis reflected in this table. There are specific scores from 1 to 10, depending on the value and the quality of internal processes and their efficiency. The values are expressed in percentages. By weighing every factor, we look at its action, at its impact, and at potential opportunities to mitigate its negative influence and to reinforce, to potentiate its positive impact. So, thus we mentioned to identify the contribution of every component to the overall efficiency value. An empirical research brought together 250 Russian companies to evaluate the HR audit procedure. This analysis allowed us to validate the basic hypothesis and to come up with some highly exciting results. This mechanism includes detailed description of all the stages and all the conditions. This analysis allows to integrate HR resources and to analyze their efficiency by way of advanced methods. HR audit is based on cognitive processes, something that the leader of a company has to be aware of. This stage allowed us to come up with a cognitive model presented on page 107 of my dissertation. After the audit, a comprehensive and integral analysis of the general landscape has to be done. HR management has to look and has to be based on specific components of the internal HR processes. This allowed us to come up with some target indicators that allow us to measure the efficiency or malfunctioning of an enterprise. This analysis allowed us also to come up with specific recommendations for every specific setting. These recommendations include some preliminary events and measures to motivate HR and some others. These recommendations include methods, objects of the evaluation, subjects of evaluation. So the general mechanism is described on pages 110, 111. The efficiency of HR audit and its measurement scale was also developed in my dissertation. This looks at the evaluation of HR efficiency, its economic efficiency, as well as expert methods of assessment. By bringing together these two methods, we can successfully evaluate the efficiency of HR audit. The key results look at the mechanism of HR audit and its impact on the internal landscape of an organization and the efficiency of its internal processes. HR audit is able to provide some extra data for managers and auditors to develop a plan so as to enhance the efficiency of an organization. One of the key advantages of this method is that the leader, or the director, has all the data on the efficiency of HR. Moreover, HR audit provides answers to lots of challenges as to why and how some specific components fail and others are successful. These results and their implementation allow to enhance the overall processes within a company. So we also developed some pattern for a case study on how to do an HR audit and how to bring together all the scattered results. This software is an application for the Bittrex 24 platform. So my dissertation has delivered thus on all the objectives and goals. It has articulated all the methods as well as their implementation and a system of assessment of how HR is efficient. The key conclusions, the key findings of the dissertation were implemented in several companies, including advertising agencies, tourism agencies, They were also presented at international conferences in Russia, in Belarus, and in Great Britain. Thank you very much for your attention.
Several reviews for the dissertation have been presented. However, I would like now to give the floor to the reviewers in case you have some critical comments about the presentation. Yes, I have one. Elena, thank you very much for your presentation. I wanted to ask you something about page 7 of your research paper. Among your goals, you include outlining the methodology for the development of the internal environment. What do you mean by this term? What is the meaning of this term, in your view? So my second question is, what is your contribution to the existing approaches to the problems? So would you like to answer all the questions at once or individually? Individually. Thank you for your question. As for your first part, about my understanding of the concept of methodology, I have developed a methodology for development, including development goals, areas, methods, the required data needed to implement environmental development. As far as the innovative aspects of my work are concerned, I have developed methodology for every component of the internal environment, organizational internal environment, in keeping with the tomographical structure of the organization, which is a new approach. Secondly, I have selected modern, innovative methods and approaches to this question. Thank you very much. Any more questions? Can I have one? Yes. Dear Elena? The method that you use for the assessment of human resource audit, is it universal or is it only applicable to commercial organizations or to organizations pursuing certain types of activity? Thank you for your question. It's a really important matter. The goal of my dissertation was to develop mechanisms for human resource audit for commercial organizations. In my opinion, this method and the mechanism for human resource audit assessment is applicable to all commercial organizations, irrespective of whether they fall in the manufacturing sector, irrespective of the size, whether it's a small business or a large business. As for state-run institutions, the methodology needs to be adjusted, of course. Yes, but there are government-controlled commercial institutions. Do you mean non-commercial, governmental non-commercial organizations? Yes, that's exactly right. Elena, you said that you conducted a survey among 250 enterprises. How did you disseminate the questionnaires, and what was the geography of your study? Thank you for your question. The survey was conducted on a sample of 250 enterprises in the Russian Federation. The surveys were sent out to different points across the country. Many of the enterprises were stationed in Viborg. Apart from the questions that went into the questionnaires, I wanted to ask some questions regarding the methodologies used by different enterprises. As far as geographical differences are concerned, we didn't make it a point to identify any differences between different companies. However, we understand that commercial organizations in Moscow and St. Petersburg are fairly unique because Moscow and St. Petersburg are megapolis. However, we did not focus on identifying regional specificities. So how many questionnaires did you use? 250 questionnaires were returned, which is approximately consistent with the number of questionnaires disseminated, because prior to sending the questionnaires, I contacted the managers and personally requested that the questionnaire be filled out. Thank you very much. Do you have any other questions? I don't know whether our colleague from Belarus would like to ask any questions. Any questions? No questions. No questions. Okay. Thank you very much. The defendant may be seated. And I would like to provide some comments on the reviews submitted to the Dissertation Council. I would like to begin with mine. Dear colleagues, I hope that you have no objections if we take the following procedure. Let us focus on the critical comments, because the positive feedback and the comments on the structure of the work and its key contents is present in the document. It's available in the written documents. So let us focus on some of the improvement areas. The drawbacks of the work are largely due to the novelty of the subject. First of all, the dissertation fails to specify how the adaptive scheme of appointment is applicable to different organizations. It's not clear how different positions can be applicable to or can be related to different units of the organization. The second comment regarding the human resource audit is based on the study conducted in 250 organizations. I think that more focus could have been made on the experience of international companies, because your research is limited almost exclusively to Russian companies, which is a sad miss. Thirdly, the author fails to specify the mechanism for using the benchmarking methodology in keeping with the logical model for the development of human resource audit, page 116. On the whole, the dissertation, however, which is submitted to our attention, is an independent research work which summarizes the results of a study that has fairly broad and important repercussions for the development of the science of management. The author has sufficiently validated the findings of the study. The dissertation is consistent with the requirements specified in the Act issued on the 1st of September 2016 about the award of scientific degrees, and the author merits the award of the PhD degree in the chosen subject field. Would you like to comment on the reviews on all of the reviews or individually? All of the reviews. Okay, so I now give the floor to my colleague. Dear colleagues, I really enjoyed reading the dissertation because it's dedicated to a highly relevant subject. That has been widely discussed in the past few years. I have a very high opinion of the dissertation, but let me focus on the three critical comments that I have. Comments or questions, treat them whatever you may. Number one, despite the high quality of the research work, the dissertation still lacks some theoretical understanding of the concept internal environment of the organization, as well as its structure. You intuitively feel that the author gravitates towards analyzing the material through the contingency theory. In our opinion, it's a miss. As far as the tomographical structure is concerned, the author is largely guided by textbooks. That means that the scientific discussion about, say, the life cycle stages of the organization being included in the internal environment, or say the organization's internal environment, including the strategy. The inclusion of these elements would have made the dissertation far more authoritative. Thirdly, the work does not provide sufficient comments on the inventory of methods for the empirical study. For example, in your dissertation, you focus on the results of the survey, failing to specify the inventory or the methodology of the survey. This makes it difficult to classify the results of the survey as well-founded. However, this doesn't invalidate the value of the findings. The dissertation is an original research project that focuses on a highly relevant research question, important to improving the quality of internal environment of the internal environment of the organization. It's of high interest in terms of the development of the theory and practice of management. The dissertation submitted for this to this dissertation council is consistent with the requirement to the requirements applicable to dissertations in the chosen subject field, and is consistent with the requirements of Clause 14 of the Act approved on the 1st of September 2016 for the award of scientific degrees. The author merits the PhD degree sought. I would like to now to give the floor to Professor Serenkova. Dear colleagues, I would like to support the opinion of the previous speaker about the high relevance of the subject. However, despite this huge relevance, there are some critical comments that I would like to make. The first comment is that among the criteria of human resource development, some criteria are absent, notably the innovation potential development. Confirmed by the number of patents, the profits generated as a result of these. However, this criterion is highly important to it's crucial to the company's competitiveness. In your dissertation, you make a list about the different types of assessment based on human resource assessment. For example, assessment, 300-degree assessment or the questionnaire assessment methods are included on the list. However, you do not include the profitability. You don't include the number of highly qualified, highly skilled worker among the workforce. Finally, as far as the return on labor is concerned, this is the ratio of results and costs. Labor results and labor costs. This formula is quoted in Professor Genkin's textbook that defines return on labor and the formula for return on labor. However, the discrepancy of your formula and Professor Genkin's formula is a result of a technical error. Critical comments do not invalidate the value of the research findings. On the whole, the dissertation work is an independent, completed research project, consistent with the requirements of the Act, issued on the 1st of September 2016 on the award of scientific degrees at St. Petersburg State University. The defendant, Kulchitskya Elena, merits the PhD degree in the chosen subject field, economics and the management of national economy. Thank you very much. I would like to give the floor to Professor Filomonova.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak about my report and about the relevance of this research. It is highly innovative and highly relevant, I should say. In my speech, I would like to primarily focus on some statements that may fuel some discussion. It is unclear how the assessment score of the integral indicator was developed, page 73, assessing the internal processes within an organization. What are the key dimensions in HR audit were identified? More so, did the author compare practices implemented by Russian and foreign scholars? Illustration 16. The algorithm of HR audit within an organization. It is unclear how to revise the HR audit in case of failures, in case of some flaws are identified. And lastly, diagram A, illustration 20, improvement of HR audit. The setup of HR audit and its quality depends on the strategy and the motivation. Does this imply such functions as pre-planning and development of recommendations? However, these critical remarks do not invalidate the significance of the research overall. This dissertation is a very important contribution into the theory of economics, and its findings are very well evidence-based. It allows us to successfully enhance the HR audit procedures This is a very valuable contribution into the economics of an enterprise and the economics of businesses overall. I should say that the dissertation paper is in compliance with all the requirements stipulated in the PhD awarding procedure, whereas Madam Kulchitskya deserves to be awarded the aspired academic degree of a PhD in economics. Thank you so much. May I now give the floor to Ludmila Tikhonova, Doctor of Economics, Professor. I believe that this dissertation is highly innovative and relevant. First, could you please speak closer to the mic, because the hearing is indeed poor. We cannot hear you. Now it's much better. Well, the issue of equality of audit is highly relevant. It is devoted to the enhancement of the internal processes. The key indicator is the economic value of an organization, not its market value. This is one of my questions. My second question is that the description of the algorithm on how to assess the efficiency of HR audit includes a cognitive dimension. So how should it be implemented? This is my question. My third question is related to illustration 17, page 116. Here we do not have the parameters that would reflect the HR controlling strategy. In the appendix, HR audit and its efficiency, where the author stipulates on the Bittrex 24 software, there is yet unclear what are the problems and risks that a manager may encounter in the process of automating this processes. Overall, the dissertation submitted in conformity with the requirements for a PhD in economics in the field of 08800005 economics and economical management is in compliance with all the requirements, whereas the defendant deserves the aspired degree in economics. This research paper is theoretically and practically integral, and it complies with all the requirements for the aspired degree. Thank you. The objectives identified by the author, as well as the goals, make this paper highly relevant. The findings of the paper are evidence-based. The dissertation has a very articulate structure and is written eloquently. The implementation of the research and the results of such implementation is published in relevant research papers. Some of them included into the list of the Higher Attestation Commission and the Scopus database. I believe that the dissertation submitted by Elena Kulchitskya under the title Development of the Internal Environment of the Organization on HR Audit Basis complies with the requirements stipulated under the Resolution 6821/1 as of September 1, 2016 on the PhD awarding procedure in St. Petersburg State University. whereas its author, Elena Kulchitskya, deserves to be awarded the aspired academic degree of a PhD in economics in the field of 080005 economics and national economy management. Thank you so much. May I now give the floor to the defendant to provide her replies and commentaries to the questions asked by distinguished members of the board. No more than 10 to 12 minutes. Distinguished members of the board, thank you so much for the reviews, for your time, and for the overall positive evaluation of my research. Those are highly practical and relevant for me, and I promise I will keep them in mind in my future academic endeavors. My reply to Mr. Kuznetsov. The first commentary is that the research paper does not stipulate the grading scheme and its parameters. Well, those parameters are identified by experts in the process of HR auditing that brings together managers who assess the relevance of a specific component within the HR procedures. This is primarily related to administrative positions and managerial positions. The second question is that the paper lacks some practical examples referring to international case studies. Well, in my paper, I analyzed a case study by Hertz Company, but this is an only international case study just because of those are either lacking or are confidential. My dominating focus were Russian companies, and therefore I declare openly that I analyzed Russian practices overall, because those are highly specific and could be different from companies in Europe or US. And the last question is HR benchmarking and some flaws in this method. This method is included into the overall logical model of how to enhance internal processes. This method implies auditing and can improve the overall procedure. My reply to Madam Minina. The first question is that the dissertation lacks some theoretical basis of the HR audit structure. The results of my theoretical basis rely on the analysis of the internal environment. I also developed a specific map to analyze processes, managerial processes, I mean, page 15 and 18, and I also rely on the results produced by international researchers. So this primarily refers to the tomographical structure of the overall management described on pages 23 and 24. As for the conformity theory, yes, indeed, I agree that I focus on the contingency theory primarily, where every requirement depends on the internal instability. This is also true about internal and external indicators. To some extent, I also include the theory of organizational potential and administrative conduct theory. My dissertation is also, Madam Minion also claims that my dissertation lacks some discussion on the life cycle of an enterprise. Yes, indeed, there are such proposals voiced by Jackson and Schuler, and this would make my analysis more profound for this model. As for the strategy, it is included into the upper layer of the tomographic structure and reflects the historical dynamics as well as present dynamics. The third statement is that the appendix lacks the methods and tools that would reflect the results of the empirical research, bringing together 250 Russian companies. Well, actually, here I should say that this analysis included interviews with 150 head managers of companies in St. Petersburg. The results are presented on pages 30 to 34 of the dissertation. The second part of this analysis looks into the heterogeneous components in the tomographical structure of HR management. This survey is described on pages 50-51 of the dissertation. Lastly, the third dimension is the assessment of the efficiency of Russian organizations. And this last dimension brings together 250 organizations that were put through an HR audit and described the methods. Some of those methods were copied from my dissertation. And therefore, my findings are based on this practical dimension and allowed me to validate my proposals. This is reflected on pages 88-92 of the dissertation. My response to Madam Tsigankova. Her first statement is that there are no criteria for innovative development. On page 27, I refer to Table 2 and the criteria developed by Eric Flamholtz. And here I indeed agree with Madam Tsigankova. Therefore, the method of HR audit looks at the assessment of the potential and introduces such indicators as innovation, and I also refer to such concepts as creative management.
On page 53, amongst the list of the method, the method based on objective economic values and rates is absent. However, the return on labor is indeed included into our methodology of IEA. Another criticism was related to return on labor that represents a ratio of net profit and labor costs, which is an absolutely correct comment. I did make a misprint here. Thank you for pointing it out. As for Dr. Filimonova's review is as far as it is concerned, to develop the scale for analysis, we used similar methodologies obtained from public sources. We collated the results of surveys among Russian top managers. Next, Dr. Milina was interested in the directions of human resource audit and whether any comparisons were made between Russian and international researchers. We did not compare Russian and international authors for publication activities. However, it would be an interesting dimension of our further studies. As for the key areas, the key directions of human resource audit, these include the structure, methodology, and content of human resource audit in Russian institutions. This was a major component of our present study. The algorithm of human resource audit does not make it clear, fails to specify how the results of the audit can be implemented. The efficiency assessment of audit, indeed, can be performed after the results of the audit have been implemented and put into practice. The efficiency of audit is indeed the efficiency of the interventions based on results of the audit. The next comment submitted by my esteemed colleague is about diagram 1, which fails to indicate strategies and systems for human resource motivation. This is highly important. Thank you very much for pointing it out. I should have included these components into my diagram, because organizational strategy is an important element of internal environment development, which is also crucial for assessment and control. Next, the next comment was concerned with EVA, MVA, and CVA. We selected EVA because this indicator reflects the actual balance information rather than external reports. And it also embraces all economic indicators applicable to this organization. In my analysis of the practical examples of human resource audit, I have identified that the absence of due motivation among managers, motivation for change, diminished the effectiveness of human resource audit, as the recommendations developed by auditors were not implemented in the end. Which is what necessitated the development of a cognitive model guiding the implementation of audit results. As for human resource controlling, I do agree that human resource controlling is required to maximize the efficiency of the processes. The controlling included in Unit 4 of IEA methodology is presented on page 116 of the dissertation. The Matrix 24 software does not provide for the problems and risks that managers can be faced with. However, these problems are non-specific, and they're quite similar to many other problems related to consumerization and implementation of software, including losses of information and failures. Sometimes there can be conflicts between software and organizational servers. To ensure the efficiency of integration, a Beatrix platform must be integrated. On the whole, the effective system of human resource control and training may be improved so that the problems outlined by you can be adjusted for. I hope that this answers your question. Thank you very much. Now I would like to give the floor to the research supervisor, PhD docent Elena Maslova. Dear members of the Dissertation Council, thank you for your appreciation of the research project. I would like to give some comments about the research as a process. I have known Elena for a long time. She was our undergraduate student. And also supervised her work, qualification work in economics. And human resource management is a field that Elena was passionate about during her undergraduate and graduate studies. Being experts in human resource management, you would appreciate the novelty of human resource audit as a subject. Elena used the self-audit and self-control mechanisms and was highly persistent in her strive towards the scientific goal, tirelessly working on her methodology and on the cognitive apparatus of the research. I would like to give some laudable comments on her achievements as a teacher. She has an international certificate about acknowledging her contribution to human resource audit methodology. She's a practicing teacher, and the combination of all these factors has enabled her to attain the goals set in the study. Elena is an accomplished researcher, an accomplished teacher. Thank you for your attention. Thank you. Dear colleagues, we will need to discuss the situation. So I would like the defendant and the scientific advisor, the supervisor, to leave the auditorium. I would also like to request the attendees to leave the meeting room.
было. Нет, не надо. Так, я могу сказать.
So I can say that the results of our discussion are absolutely unanimous. We unanimously support this dissertation and deem that Madam Kulchitskya deserves being awarded the aspired degree of PhD in economics. I should say that the defendant should go on with her academic endeavors, and we will be looking forward for your doctoral dissertation. So we have already voted. So once again, who is in favor? Please vote. So unanimously in favor. Madam Kulchitskya, all distinguished members of the dissertation board, I congratulate you on this successful defense. I urge the rector to issue a diploma and to draft the necessary documents. So the defense is over. Thank you so much. The meeting of the dissertation board is adjourned.
Заключительное слово. Есть что в заключение сказать? Я прошу извинить, отключились, да? Заключительное слово.
I'm sorry. It was too early to adjourn, so we have to give the floor to the defendant for her concluding statement. I'm sorry, we have to resume the session. The concluding remarks delivered by the defendant. I extend my gratitude to the dissertation board for for the support. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the critical remarks. Thank you for your reviews, for such a thorough study of my dissertation. I also want to say thank you to my department, the Department of Economics and National Management, the department that has always supported me as a teacher and as a scholar. I'm also highly grateful to my research supervisor, Evgenia Maslova, for her advice, for being in touch always. Thank you very much. So now may I indeed justly declare that the meeting of the dissertation board is adjourned.